We've lost count of how many times we've seen a seemingly well-considered theory of change from an impact enterprise. But when we dig deeper, it appears as though it was more of a check-the-box activity for a funder or other stakeholder. What stands out to us in those cases are the seemingly miraculous leaps in moving from A to B and B to C, and the glaring cracks where evidence of linkages should be. If a theory of change is just written on a piece of paper and then filed away, it can't live up to its full potential as a living, breathing, evolving framework for driving impact. We want to share 3 pieces of advice to help you leverage this critical tool to drive impact. In its simplest form, a theory of change is a series of if-then linkages. If we do A, then B will happen. And if B happens, it will lead to C, and so on. It shows how an enterprise's activities lead to the outputs, outcomes, and ultimately the impact that the enterprise seeks. It's your theory for how you get from, say, creating a more nutritious maize seed to decreasing malnutrition for billions of people around the world. And that might look like, if we develop more nutritious maize seeds, then the number of farmers planting these seeds would increase. And then more people would consume the nutrient-rich maize that is harvested, which would then lead to decreases in nutrient deficiencies and improved health. But there are some big leaps of faith here, right? Is simply developing a new seed variety going to miraculously convince farmers to purchase and plant it? Stopping here at the highest level wouldn't be sufficient to have it serve as an effective framework to drive change. Our first piece of advice is not to stop at this high level, but rather to break down your theory of change into sufficient detail to avoid these miracle leaps. The 2024 winner of CASE's FM Kirby Prize for Scaling Impact, Semilla Nueva, provides an excellent example of doing this breakdown effectively. Semilla Nueva fights malnutrition and poverty with better corn for the billions of people worldwide for whom corn is the basis of their diets. We just teased, at a high level, one piece of their model. So let's show how they've broken it down to identify the most critical steps that must happen for them to be successful. Looking specifically at the leap from the development of more nutritious seeds to actually getting smallholder farmers to plant those seeds, Semilla Nueva articulates how they will identify all key stakeholders who must play a role in this process, how they'll work to create incentives for each of these stakeholders, such as creating subsidies to spur manufacturing and bring down consumer prices, ensuring that the incentives lead to a chain of production, distribution, and purchasing actions, and ensure that this chain results in the farmer having the seeds in hand at the right time and also being willing and able to plant them. Take a look at your own theory of change and see if there are any miracle leaps. Then take the time to fill them in with the steps that you believe are critical to making your model work. Of course, even when you have broken down key steps, there's still more work to be done. And that's because your theory of change is just that. It's a theory. It's based on a set of assumptions or hypotheses. Which leads us to our second piece of advice. Use your theory of change to identify and test the key assumptions that link each step to the next. Let's look again at Semilla Nueva to highlight a place where we often see enterprises neglecting to rigorously test key assumptions. Those assumptions between the short, medium, and long-term outcomes. For Semilla Nueva, there are significant assumptions linking consumption of the harvested maize to a meaningful decrease in nutrient deficiencies. such as an assumption that the maize harvested from the seeds maintains its nutrient profile across different farmers with different farming practices and soil quality and so much more. Or the assumption that even if the harvested maize retains its quality, people consume the maize in large enough quantities to decrease their nutrient deficiencies. So it's critical that Semilla Nueva identifies and rigorously tests these assumptions. For example, they test the nutrient profile of harvested maize across many environments and practices. They calculate the amount of maize that would need to be consumed to decrease nutrient deficiencies. They track the quantity consumed by their target population, and much more. By identifying the key assumptions and continually testing them, any enterprise can use their theory of change as a framework from which to iterate and improve on their model over time. Now you might be thinking, testing and proving all of these assumptions sounds overwhelming. But wait, our final piece of advice is that you don't need to prove all of these linkages alone. You can leverage existing bodies of research. Let's look at one major assumption in Semilla Nueva's model: that decreases in specific nutrient deficiencies, like zinc or iron, will lead to meaningful improvement in an individual's overall health. Semilla Nueva didn't need to take it upon themselves to conduct the resource-intensive clinical research connecting nutrient deficiencies and specific health outcomes. They were able to leverage a robust set of external peer-reviewed studies proving these linkages. So if you work in a field that has existing bodies of evidence, be sure to leverage it to help support your theory of change so that you can focus on the places where gaps still exist. When it does live up to its full potential, your theory of change can serve as a framework to help you articulate the critical steps to achieve your impact. It can serve as a tool to identify and then test the assumptions linking those steps. And it rewards you with more clarity on where those linkages are strong and where they are weak, so that you can iterate and improve your model. Without it, you're leaving way too much impact on the table.